We proudly present the story of I Am Terrell, a revered Fort Worth institution that was separate but excellent. No matter who you ask, the mere mention of I Am Terrell to a native Fort Worthian of African American heritage is sure to evoke an emotional response, one of joy, nostalgia, legacy, and a sense of overwhelming pride. This iconic institution has left an indelible mark on the history of Fort Worth and so many of its citizens.
My dad was a member of the first school body at I Am Terrell, and he was a member of the first graduating class from I Am Terrell. And my baby brother was a member of the last graduating class of the old I Am Terrell building. And so I say that my family spanned the entire life of I Am Terrell insofar as the building was concerned.
The story of this landmark school began back in 1882, only 17 years after the end of slavery. The city of Fort Worth was still young, having been formed only 33 years earlier and known as the place where the West begins. The city was home to a thriving cattle industry and the Texas and Pacific Railway. Notorious outlaws such as Billy the Kid, Butch Cassidy, and Jesse James were rolling through town looking for trouble. When the city established taxpayer-funded schools, Fort Worth Mayor John Peter Smith chose Alexander Hogg as the first superintendent, and he went right to work developing the district. The public school system opened in October of 1882. Schools were segregated by race, with 5 school buildings for the white students and 2 rented black churches for the black students. The 9th Street Colored High School, as it was called, was staffed with 4 black teachers and led by Isaiah Milligan Terrell, a private school educated professor with a master's degree from the school now known as Dillard University in New Orleans. Terrell was then promoted to superintendent of all colored schools in the city in 1890. In 1915, Professor Terrell left the district to become principal at Prairie View College. In 1921, the school was renamed in his honor, and I Am Terrell High later relocated to its current location in the late 1930s. Up until the 1950s, I Am Terrell High School was the only African American public high school in Tarrant County, and it served students as far away as Weatherford who were determined to get an education. As these students traveled from more than 17 different cities across the area, it's important to note that the cost of transportation for students was not covered by the school district. Students had to walk, carpool, or buy a ticket on a Greyhound or Continental Trailways bus where they would get dropped off downtown Fort Worth and then had to walk another mile west to school. And what any alumni will tell you is that the experience was certainly worth the journey.
We got an extraordinary education at I Am Terrell. That's what we learned at I Am Terrell, that we were destined to be great because of what we received at I Am Terrell, which was knowledge, support, mutual support, peer support, and the notion that we could be excellent because we are excellent.
Since the school's inception, Fort Worth District made sure it selected only the brightest and best to reign at the helm of this iconic institution. Each principal who served is remembered by alumni as a qualified, compassionate, and involved leader. And all alumni agree, the secret weapon to I Am Terrell, it was the teachers.
We were taught by teachers who not only knew that we could learn, they expected us to learn. They taught us that in order to even be considered equal, we had to be much better than the standard set by others. We were taught by teachers who had outstanding qualifications. They had graduate degrees from prestigious universities. They taught at I Am Terrell because their skills and their educations were not welcome in the mainstream economy. So we got the benefit.
Of course, there was one iconic educator who is remembered by all.
Mrs. Hazel Harvey Peace was a tiny little teacher who weighed hardly over 100 pounds, graduate of Columbia University and Howard University, spoke as proper as anyone in the world, and who brought drama and classics and things that they said we didn't need to know about, that we ought to be learning how to work with our hands, not learning the classics and not learning drama and debating. But she brought all of those good things to us, which I'm sure enriched our lives and made us better able to compete in an integrated society.
And she brought what all those other teachers brought. She brought expectation. You know, if you don't expect much from young people, you won't get much. She expected a great deal from us, not only in terms of how well we learn, but in terms of discipline and our actions. And even though she was very small, is very small, as Dr. Brooks said, all she had to do was say young man to the roughest kid, and there was silence, there was order.
Hazel Bernice Harvey Peace was born in 1903 in Waco, Texas. Her family moved to Fort Worth shortly thereafter. She was a graduate of the class of 1919 when Terrell High was known as the Fort Worth Colored High School. After obtaining her bachelor's degree in education at Howard University, in 1923 she quickly returned to her alma mater to begin her career. During her summer breaks, Ms. Peace earned a master's from Columbia University with additional postgraduate study at the University of Wisconsin, Vassar College, Hampton University, and Clark Atlanta University. It is quite likely that Ms. Peace holds the distinction of being the longest-serving educator at Terrell, dedicating almost half a century, first as teacher, then counselor, dean of girls, and finally vice principal. Her retirement in 1972 was commensurate with the closing of the school due to desegregation. After leaving the school district, Ms. Peace kept busy with many civic and philanthropic activities. She served as the newsletter editor of the Colored Teachers State Association. She was a faithful member of Baker Chapel AME Church and continued to inspire young people by reading to them at the local community center and the Fort Worth Public Library, where a section is named in her honor. Miss Peace declined any fancy accolades while she was alive, but we now celebrate her legacy with a public school as well as a municipal building which both bear her name. She passed at the age of 105, and she remains one of the most influential and revered figures in Tarrant County Black history. In addition to the great teachers, the I.M. Terrell curriculum was second to none, with an abundance of academic, fine arts, and vocational choices which fit all students' needs.
During my tenure at I.M. Terrell, they offered classes in technical skills like typing, radio and television, and classes of that sort. And those classes were being offered because they thought kids who didn't get to go to college could still make a viable living if they had a skill. And when they closed Terrell in 72, a lot of those classes went to technical high school.
Carver merged with I.M. Terrell, and I started over at Terrell at that time, and I had to take civics from my mother because she was the only one teaching it. Theresa B. Lee was my mother. Back in the day, they had a program called distributive education. Students would get credit for leaving the school going to a job. But in the meantime, the vocational part of the school, they taught mechanics and electricity. I mean, they taught
Leather.
leather. They had leather craft. Mr. McAllister taught you how to build furniture. And, everybody had a skill when they left that school. You either went to college or you went further with the skills you learned at I.M. Terrell. Wonderful place, wonderful school.
The I.M. Terrell Athletics program was another shining example of excellence. The school offered a full spectrum of sports in which students excelled, garnering statewide respect. Due to the limitations of segregation, black athletes were unable to compete with whites. Up until 1966, I.M. Terrell was part of the Prairie View Interscholastic League, the PVIL, which was the counterpart to the UIL, which served the white students. The PVIL was created as the main academic and athletic competitive organization for African American students in Texas, and I.M. Terrell was one of 150 plus member schools. Like its white counterpart, the PVIL governed academic, athletic, and band. In its 50-year existence, the PVIL produced numerous outstanding coaches, athletes, students, and citizens. Under the affiliation with this organization, I.M. Terrell certainly produced its fair share of rising stars, such as this young coach named Robert Hughes, who worked at the school for 15 years until it closed. Coach Hughes then moved to Dunbar, where he earned the title winningest coach in the history of high school basketball, a title which he still wears proudly today.
All of this actually started in fall of '58. For all of those guys that played for me over at I.M. Terrell from '58 up to '73 when it closed, for all the Dunbar guys that played from '73 up until now, and some of them probably don't want to.
Coach Robert Hughes, first a Panther, then a Wildcat, always a teacher of excellence. And how about that music department? During the mid-century era, the I.M. Terrell Music Department soared to new heights under the guidance of leaders such as Miss Adelaide Tresvant, G.A. Baxter, and later Mr. Charles
The I
Watts.
Am Terrell choir in the 50s was astronomical in the sense of the word that there was really no other choir to compare it to. Mrs. Adelaide Chazadant was our teacher, our instructor, our music director, the whole bit.
And still today, the Terrell alumni continue to honor her memory in song. But it was during the late 40s and 50s when the sounds of jazz, bebop, and boogie-woogie began to fill the halls of I Am Terrell. Director G.A. Baxter was described as a rather stern teacher who hated jazz, but nevertheless, he managed to mentor a veritable who's who list of gifted musicians who changed the landscape of this musical genre across the globe. Among his proteges who have gained international prominence are John Wallace Carter, master of clarinet, saxophone, and flute. Jazz and R&B guitarist Cornell Dupree. Composer, singer, and guitarist Edward Ray Sharp. Trumpeter and drummer Charles Moffett. Julius Arthur Hemphill, jazz composer and saxophonist. Saxophonist Dewey Redman, who performed with Ornette Coleman and Keith Jarrett. Legendary jazz drummer and composer Ronald Shannon Jackson, known as Roundhouse. Curtis Owsley was a saxophonist, band leader, and record producer. Nationally known jazz historian and educator Marjorie Hollins Crenshaw. Jazz saxophonist, violinist, and composer Randolph Denard Ornette Coleman was famously kicked out of the band by director Baxter for improvising a bit too much, but he went on to become the principal creator of the free jazz genre of music. Isaiah Milligan Terrell High School was certainly a treasure trove of resources, culture, history, and school pride. But tragic news came in the spring of 1973. While everyone knew that the school was separate but excellent, an existing federal law demanded that it could not remain as such. Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka was a landmark 1954 Supreme Court case in which justices ruled unanimously that racial segregation of children in public schools was unconstitutional. The Brown decision was one of the cornerstones of the civil rights movement and helped establish the precedent that separate but equal education and other services were not, in fact, equal at all. Following this decision, many districts across the country, including Fort Worth schools, did not immediately comply. It took almost 2 decades, along with much protest, unrest, and the threat that the district would lose federal funding in order to implement this law. And sadly, the school closure took many students by surprise. like this alumni who is left with precious artifacts and bittersweet memories.
I was a head majorette at the time. I majorette for 2 years, but I became head majorette my senior year. I was track sweetheart, and I was in the I Am Terrell pageant as well. But the way that I found out, our class found out that we were being closed down, is I happened to go by and see all of these pictures that I have here. I have a book full of them, and they were all in the garbage. And I couldn't understand why, because I worked on what we call the Panther's Paw, which was a newspaper, as well as the yearbook. And when the instructor told us that the school was being closed down, well, I tried to grab everything I saw. I saw trophies in the garbage. I saw pictures in the garbage. And I couldn't understand why we were being closed down. But what happened is the staff at I Am Terrell went to Fort Worth ISD and pretty much begged them to allow us to continue our year, because it was about mid-year, March of '73. They weren't going to allow us to have a prom or graduation. But because of that, we were able to get through the year. But soon afterwards, they closed the school down. So it was traumatizing to us all. But it did happen, and I just thank God for the alumni that the school was not torn down, so that it's a historical school.
Well, when the busing orders began to come down, the solution was we need to close those high schools. And I Am Terrell and two other predominantly black high schools became the victims of integration, because they didn't want to send white kids to those schools. They wanted the integration to go the other way. Blacks would have to go into predominantly white schools. And we lost it. And I feel partly responsible for letting it die that way.
But wait, hold up. What this distinguished alumni did not know in this 1994 interview is that 22 years later, he would be part of something truly remarkable.
I'm pleased to be here today and celebrate the groundbreaking for the new I Am Terrell Academy for STEM and VPA. This has become a reality, and this is a sight to see for all of us, and we're really, really excited about what Fort Worth ISD is going to be doing here at this location. We're extremely proud to be a part of this with you, and we're happy that we could have done our part to honor the legacy of I Am Terrell.
That's it. This new thing is the future, and that's what I'm looking forward to. That's why I'm out here.
I Am Terrell building, which sat vacant for 25 years, was reopened briefly as an elementary school in 1998, but thanks to the unsinkable efforts of alumni and the community at large, the school is back, bigger and better than ever, inclusive of students of all races, and still bursting with excellence.
The new building will be approximately 65,000 square feet on 2 floors. And the existing I Am Terrell building, which is in beautiful condition both inside and out, will remain.
One.
All right, good morning. How's everyone doing? We are in for a treat, guys. We're in for an absolute treat. I have never been so excited on the first day of school. What we want this to be is your space to become who you're going to be. Nice place to start the day, huh? Absolutely. We're so excited.
I Am Terrell Academy for STEM and VPA. A great combination of an old historic building built over 100 years ago and a brand new structure with a state-of-the-art performing arts. It's a wonderful high school. It's amazing.
The interior is so beautiful.
Just seeing the excitement on the parents' face that their child is going to get to attend a school is just, it's priceless.
How we doing, fellas? You ready?
I'm so excited.
Our children get a private education in a public school city.
The
taken, you know, an entire community to get this together, and it's just phenomenal.
This is a blessing for the kids of Fort Worth.
Successful first day for us is Zoe has a great day, and every child in Fort Worth ISD has a great day.
This is an amazing facility. Just the look, the feel, having a new landmark for this area is truly inspirational.
I will start every morning with Good Morning because I want this to be the way that we start off the day every single day.
And so the story continues. The sleek, new, upgraded facility with its enhanced curriculum will continue to turn out proud graduates for another 100 years. Terrell alumni have spread far and wide, but their hearts will never stray from the school that was separate but excellent. I.M. Terrell Panthers are easy to spot. Just look for someone with their head held high, a great sense of pride, a gleam in their eye, and someone who will burst into song at the drop of a hat.
And through the years that come and go, we'll sing of old Terrell High.
And here's to another century of excellence. I am Terrell. We salute you.